Welcome to another episode of the Commute Me Podcast, a conversational podcast exploring the stories, insights, and strategies behind learning-centric communities. Our mission is to inspire listeners by highlighting individuals who are shaping the future of how people come together to learn, grow, and thrive. I'm thrilled today to have with me Sarah Filman, founder of Playful Perspectives and co-founder of the Improv Mindset, whose work helps individuals and teams dissolve the work-play divide, find joy in collaboration, and lead with authenticity. And I just want to say that Sarah has been so thoughtful in sending me what she actually designed for Playful Perspectives, which is this amazing leader guidebook and 52 individual cards that are just, this is the first time I've ever had a guest that's been so thoughtful to actually send me information, materials, and physical goodies ahead of time. So Sarah, it's awesome to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Farhan. I am doing really well. I'm so excited to talk. Every time I talk about play, I feel more playful, so I'm excited to get into it.
And from the time we met, Sarah, I think I can reflect, it was back in December of 2024. We met at a networking event, and I was really drawn to how passionate you are about play and about improv and about bringing people together to really come together in a way that almost unarms or disarms their day to day, right? When we're all trying to portray ourselves in a certain persona, maybe at work or maybe at home, and play really disarms that in a very valuable way and in a very nurturing way, which you've really dedicated your career to. So I'd love to start by asking you, Sarah, what led you to explore this intersection of creativity, leadership, and play? And I'd love to hear more about your story.
Yeah, so I think anybody who had worked with me in kind of the first chapter of my life, where I was kind of on the technical side of things, a product manager, they knew that I was fun, right? I loved bringing in icebreakers. I loved planning kickball games. So I was always that's always been a part of me that I've brought to the work. But I would say that it was always focused on connection and trust building and relationship building, which I think play is brilliant at. It wasn't until my first improv class where I realized how developmental play really was and could be. And what I mean by that is like I grew as a person, as a leader. Yes, there was connection and trust that was built with the other people, but I really saw a new dimension to play that leveled me up as a leader. I was managing a team of people, and I had actually taken my first improv class because I was feeling nervous in some of these impromptu moments during team meetings. So improv gave me that gift, and it was in community. It was through the support and the energy of that improv community that helped me grow. So it kind of became all of these things in one. And that's what really led me to say, hey, I know improv is, a performance art. You can go to a theater for entertainment, but are there people out there who are using improv for the experience that I found, which is for developmental purposes, for learning, development, growth? Turns out there is. There's a really robust community out there, but that was really that turning point. It was experiencing it through an improv class.
And how do you think, to the average person, maybe listening in, or certainly I can speak for myself, Sarah, improv to me is about spontaneity. It's about kind of raw creative expression, right? Do what comes to mind, be fearless, be very bold in terms of, what you're putting out there, right? And a lot of folks have, at least in my circle, they've associated improv with the entertainment element of it, right?
Mm.
So it's funny, or it's a way, it's a precursor to maybe something that somebody doing stand up, or overall some part of a comedy routine, right? How did that transformation take place where you came to see improv as a tool to build leaders and to empower folks?
Mm.
Like, was there a turning point, or was there like a switch that flipped for you at some point in your journey where that became clear?
Yeah, great question. I think what I found was that a lot of the leadership mottos that I had learned in maybe more traditional leadership development things of like, you need to normalize like making mistakes and learning from them. You do need to be willing to be bold and take strategic risks, right? Things that on paper or in a book you read and you say, like, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. But where do you, if you're not particularly bold, if you are terrified of maybe making mistakes, which I would put myself in both of those categories at the time, how do you go from like A to B? And I think that that's what improv offered me was structured opportunities that are low stakes where you get to try just for 5 minutes being bold. Try just for 5 minutes being scared and doing it anyway. Try just for 5 minutes making a mistake and, it not, the world not ending. So it becomes kind of this sandbox to practice a lot of those things that I knew were good qualities of leaders anyway. So that was what was the
Mm-hmm.
aha for me of like, oh, I'm getting to actually do all these things. I know changing my relationship to failure is going to benefit me, my team, the people I work with, but like how do you do it? And so I think it was the hands-on experiential practice. And I saw the results at work. I saw that I was willing to make mistakes and kind of laugh at myself more. I saw the way that I approached my team. So that was it was me. It was like me going through this journey that first helped me connect those dots.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly powerful for multiple reasons, but I think a lot of times it's that, leaving the comfort zone is something that we've all had to kind of come to terms with, whether that was in the workplace or something in our personal lives, right? Where you have to become comfortable with becoming uncomfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually one of the trends that I've explored with many other guests that have come on the podcast, and folks have shared this idea of, vulnerability really being something that you want to strive for in certain situations because it's one of the ingredients for growth, right? And you really have to, again, be in that mindset of maybe I'm going to do something that I haven't done before or that I'm not comfortable with, but it's going to impact what I take away from this experience and the bonds that I end up making perhaps in this experience, which fundamentally I think are what we should strive for. Uh, One of the other things too, Sarah, that as I learned more about your work and as I, see your booklet and the cards and everything that you've created, um, communities are so instrumental in transforming culture, in transforming the way that people collaborate and build and sustain their missions, right, and what they're striving to achieve. I think you've touched on this a bit, but I would love to hear where like what really led you to create the improv mindset as an extension of what you were doing for Playful Perspectives. Like, what was the interplay there? When did you kind of decide that community would become really part and parcel of what you're building?
Yeah. So the improv mindset. So the Playful Perspectives was what I kind of first went into the world with. It was me as a coach, me as an individual facilitator, trainer, uh, and I did that for a while and realized that facilitating solo, it has its benefits. You have like more control over it, but it also left me a little lonely at the end of the day, I guess you could say. And I also was craving more of that thought partnership with somebody. So I kind of, you know, started to put my antenna up for somebody that I could build something new with, and just kind of put it out, I'd say more to the universe at the time. But Jordan Hirsch responded to that call from the universe and was looking to do something very similar of support leaders, support teams, and managers through the power of improv, also using a lot of the coaching frameworks and structures. So we, in I guess 2022, uh, started the improv mindset. So that is the work that we do together. And I'd say having a collaborator makes all of the difference. Like improv You can, in theory, do improv with one person. You can do an improvised one person show. But I would say the heart of improv and why I'm drawn to it over, say, stand up comedy is that the heart of improv is inherently collaborative. What a lot of people hear about, like, yes, and the idea of that is noticing, accepting, and building with what somebody else gives you. And so an improv is at its heart an ensemble or a collaborative based art form. So it's been really amazing to collaboratively build a business around bringing improv to more people.
Yeah, and again, I think this idea of like you recognized something that you wanted to build. This is the common thread that all entrepreneurs have, right? Like, and you got to a point where you thought, this is how far I've come as a single person, as a solopreneur, right? As a coach. At that inflection point, you had to make a conscious decision to expand what you were doing, and you were seeking that partnership and that growth, and that's what led to your collaboration, right? And kind of where you are today. So I think that's an important lesson for our listeners as well, because we do want to seek that. We do want to put our ask out to the universe, when the time is right, right? When we feel like we should be taking that leap, we shouldn't hesitate from asking for that validation or that support or that guidance or that sense of community. And one of the things that I'm learning too on the entrepreneurial journey is when you put yourself out there, like when you're representing yourself as your genuine self and what you're passionate about, you will be floored by the responses that you'll get. People are so willing to help. People are so there's really so much out there that you can leverage, but you'll never know unless you actually put yourself out there,
Totally.
until you take that leap.
You start shining your light and saying, this is what matters to me. Like you become this lighthouse and people are
Hmm.
drawn to that. If they're not everybody is drawn to that, I'll say that, but the right people are drawn to that because they see that light and they're saying, that's what I want to build too. That's what I want to talk about too. That's how I want to be in the world. Um, yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think it needs to be celebrated more, right? And oftentimes we tend to feel, at least I feel this way, that maybe I'm maybe I'm putting myself out there, but I'm not getting the types of responses that I would like. It's okay. It has to be a sustained effort, right? People are going to notice regardless, right? It's just that some of them maybe won't resonate with you the way that you wanted them to, and that's why they're not reaching out. Or there could be many other reasons why you're not getting maybe the type of reception that you were seeking. But the more you do it and the more that you bake that into a practice of here's what I care about, here's what really drives me, here's what I'm passionate about, and you have that genuine outreach to the circles that matter, before you know it, somebody will reach out and really enable you to take the work that you do to the next level. So yeah, there's a lot that we can talk about when it comes to teamwork and partnerships and entrepreneurship. But walk me through, Sarah. One of the things that I'd love to learn a little bit more about is one of these transformations, right? So maybe you can give us an example of a team that had maybe initially not thought of play or improv as being something that could really change the way that they work together. But then once they went through your programs and had that experience, it totally transformed the way that they did things.
Yeah, I'd love to. So, transformation, it does happen over time. But what I will give an example of is something where there was a big aha that I think with dedicated effort and focus can lead to sustained transformation. So there's an improv game called, some people call it fork and knife, some people call it build a silent object. So imagine you have a room of people that are a team, could be really any size, and the instructions that you give them are that they cannot talk, and you're going to give them an object to build with their bodies over the course of 10 seconds. And so you start off maybe in pairs, keeping it easy, build a fork and knife. You count down from 10, and people figure out without talking how to, with their bodies, build a fork and knife. Then as the rounds go on, you're maybe doing groups of 4, groups of 8, more complicated objects. Maybe a sailboat or a campfire. At the end, Jordan and I have actually, with a conference room, with a ballroom full of people, had them build an airplane silently. And it's fun and people are laughing and that's great. But where some of the transformation happens is when you stop midway through and you ask people to notice what their leadership tendencies are for engaging in the game. Some people, you say sailboat, their hands are up right away waving like a sail. Some people hang back and observe what the team needs, and then they fill in gaps. So you can have a conversation about, and then you point out or you ask the question that ends up being kind of rhetorical of, is the way that you approached this game similar to how you approach problems, projects outside of this game? And people tend to nod in recognition because the people who tend to dive in head first, make a first move, they tend to do that outside of the game and inside of the game. The people who might tend to hang back, see where they're needed, understand what's happening, they tend to do that outside. So then you can ask the question, can you play with different choices? So for these next couple of rounds, make a different leadership choice and notice what happens. So if you're the person who tends to dive in right away, consider hanging back. If you're the person who hangs back, what if you made a strong, bold choice right away? And the lessons and ahas that come out of that are pretty profound. One thing that can happen is people realize, oh, we were slower and more intentional. There was less chaos because we slowed out of our defaults. Another thing people realize is you can flex your leadership styles. Like we often kind of get can feel very rigid, right? Oh, I'm an introvert, I'm an extrovert, I take bold choice, I'm risk averse, I'm not. And we put these boxes around ourselves. And I think these games start to chip away at how rigid those boxes are and let people see a version of themselves where it still might not be their preference or their default to lead in a certain way or behave in a certain way, but we're all capable of it. And with practice and intention, that could grow to be more of a habit. So I think that moment where with no talking, no discussion, there's no PowerPoint slides, people feel that experience of leading in a different way and seeing the impact on the group. And that turns out to be really powerful.
I love that, Sarah. There's so much that I think as you were speaking, what I was thinking to myself was, when did I last do something like that? And it's been a while. I honestly can't think back to like being in a large group setting and doing something that was out of the box, creative, right? In that sense. So the natural question that comes to mind for me is the average person maybe who wants to embrace some of that spontaneity or that have that eureka moment. Is there a way to do that in the life with the busy schedules and things happening? Are there like exercises or best practices that people could potentially, take part in?
Yeah, I know there are so many ways. I mean, there's so many decisions that come our way and rightfully so, we are on autopilot about a lot of things, right? We take the same route to the bus, or we reach for the same thing in the fridge to make our breakfast, or we check in with people on a meeting in the same way. We ask them, how was your weekend, right? So there's these things that are kind of our defaults or our habits. I would recommend picking one and change it up, right? Don't try to change your whole life, but just pick one and see what happens. If you take a different route to the bus, what do you notice about the houses that you pass before? If you show up to a meeting and ask a different question, what are the answers that you get that are different? So I think if you combine changing it up with curiosity and noticing like what changed, I think it can be quite empowering because it really brings like your locus of control very close to you. You realize that we have a lot more choice in our life than we might ordinarily feel. A lot of times, and rightfully so, a lot of things are happening to us. A lot of things are out of our sphere of control. So starting to recognize all of the things that actually are in our control and changing them a little bit at a time and running those little experiments, I think can be very empowering and help people tap into that feeling of creativity, of freedom, of flexibility, and kind of tap into that spark.
Mindfulness, I think, is really key, right? I think as I reflect on this a bit more, understanding the places where you can make changes, those small tweaks, like you're saying, Sarah, right? Will have those incremental changes will build up to a point where now you're going to be so much more cognizant and mindful of what you can influence and what you can't influence necessarily, right? To your point. And then I think if us individually, if each person makes that a part of their, life, where slowly but surely they're experimenting more, they're improving more, right? That can then have a snowball effect where the people they come into contact with, the individuals that they influence kind of in their concentric circles, maybe some of that is going to be, brushed off, right? And then you'll get more and more people associating those types of changes with healthy behaviors that they can then continue to build upon, right? As they empower themselves, as they see what they can influence within their circles. That gives me a lot to think about, actually, Sarah, because I feel like now I need to take particular steps in my life and those that I can influence to kind of really bring some of this about. Because again, I think the mundane, monotonous existence, the routine lifestyle is something that a lot of us can just by default settle into because it's predictable. I'm not going to rock my own boat because, why do that? But we don't have to rock the boat. It's not about rocking the boat. It's about noticing the waves as we are on the boat differently than we were before, right? So, any thoughts there, Sarah?
Yeah, I love that connection to mindfulness. I was actually just reading an article that was published a couple of years ago by somebody who does improv and is a psychiatrist. And he was talking about how improv brings a group into kind of group mindfulness, which was a very interesting concept because I had only previously been thinking about kind of individual mindfulness. But this idea of a group of people really coming into the present moment, slowing down, and just making choices right there. And to tie into kind of the word spontaneity that you've used, like that's where spontaneity comes from. It's not in the past, it's not in the future, it's right in the present moment. So how do you bring your attention to the present moment? And I think play and improv offer a lot, they have a lot of wisdom to share about how to bring us into the present moment and just play with what's there, the connection that's there, the person that's there. So I really resonate with that. And there's a whole other podcast we could do about play and mental health, which is not what this podcast is about, but it's another passion of mine where I think that mindfulness part really is really a gift that improv can offer and play.
Yeah, no, I'm so happy that we got a chance to kind of coalesce on that without that even being one of the ideas that I had coming into this conversation. But it really helps put things into perspective about, creative expression and the art of play, right? The art of improv. They really become most valuable when you approach them for what they are, which is just a different way of thinking about the way that you can do things, right? What you can influence, what you can control, how you can leave your comfort zone, how you can get somebody else to leave their comfort zone. And it takes a lot of deliberate kind of thought and this sense of, I'm going to enjoy what I'm doing here and really just be spontaneous and have fun with it, right? So it's a very creative, by definition, it's a very creative endeavor,
Right.
uh, which is exciting. I don't think I've had this creative a conversation on the podcast as of yet, Sarah. So this is a really nice change from the norm when I'm kind of like, yeah, there's more defined frameworks that I can kind of hone in on, but this by definition is almost like we're having a playful exchange on the episode itself. Um,
Yeah,
what,
absolutely. And
where,
if I can just,
absolutely.
this is the community podcast. And I want to talk about
Yes.
community and the role of the community and the culture and creating a space where that risk taking and that vulnerability is possible. And I think
Go
that
for
that
it.
that is just that needs to be intentional. So I think when I think about the structure of improv, while it is spontaneous, there is this big set of rules that are effectively cultural rules of how are we as a community going to engage with each other so that we can feel good taking these risks and making these mistakes. So I think you and I in this conversation, which does feel spontaneous, like we kind of have some implicit improv rules that we're operating off of, right? Which is presently listening to the other person, trying to build with what the other person actually offered rather than kind of having our own agenda of what we want to say. So yeah, I thought that I just wanted to make that connection because I think community is huge to making it a place where you can actually try these things.
Yeah, no, I thank you for recognizing that, Sarah. I think that's critical too, because again, none of this can happen. It can only happen to a certain extent if you're doing it in isolation, right? You have to embrace the personal dimension of this as well as the communal dimension of it. And as you grow your own abilities in mindfulness, in pushing your boundaries, in thinking about things in a more improvisational manner, right? That's when you can really take the leap and extend it to others. What's on the docket for you, Sarah, as you continue your work in this space? What should our listeners know about what to expect from both playful perspectives and the improv mindset coming up maybe this year into 2026?
Yeah. So you talked about these cards at the beginning. So I will
Yes.
say one
Oh,
thing
yes.
that I just alluded to at the beginning as well was this background in kind of product management. So the first big chapter of my career was being a product manager and a leader building a curriculum product. And since my shift into training, facilitation, and coaching, I've been very service oriented. So, go into an organization for right for an event, for a professional development day or something like that. And last year, I was having kind of this nagging feeling of like, I love the services, and what does it mean? How could I put some of these tools in leaders' hands when I'm not in the room, right? When I'm not the one actively leading that training. So that was a big impetus to create this activity deck and guide, was kind of that product mindset of how might I scale bringing play into work. I will keep doing the services that we're doing. Jordan and I will keep going into organizations. That work is intense and wonderful and transformative. And when we leave, maybe what supports do we leave with people, and how can leaders bring this into their day to day? So that's something I'm excited about, and I plan on kind of continuing available. And all of these activities are designed for people who don't consider themselves play experts, improv experts. It's meant for the everyday leader or manager who is at least curious about or already sees the value that play can have in helping their team connect and communicate better together. So that is something I am excited about.
And I think that's one of the things that as a solopreneur, I'm actually also thinking about actively is moving away from services and to actually productizing some of the work that I do. So that transition is it resonates with me a lot because again, it's about scalability. It's about doing more with what you have. You have a lot of experience in this space and you've impacted so many organizations, but you can always take it to the next level and like for folks that aren't able to see, because the video is not going to be out for some time, but just the quality of the cards and the leader guidebook that Sarah's put together, really high quality, and it really invites the type of playful connection and teamwork, collaborative um, type of experience that we've been talking about this whole time. So, how can folks find out more about the work that you do, Sarah? We're going to put all of that in the show notes, but I'd love for you to share if you have any preferences in terms of how folks should reach out.
Yeah, well, if they want to reach out, I think LinkedIn is the best place. I'm just on it as me, Sarah Filman. If you're curious about the services and the cards, that'll be on playfulperspectives.com. And then the work that Jordan and I do together with organizations doing professional development using improv is at improvmindset.fun.
What an amazing extension, .fun. I haven't heard of that one yet. It drives a point home that it's all about fun and play and about exploration. If there's one final thought, Sarah, that you'd like to leave our audience with, perhaps something we didn't get a chance to touch on, or something we did touch on that you think we should kind of double click on and emphasize, what would that be?
That's a great question. I think kind of a side quest that I have around play is expanding people's definition of what play is or can be. So play does not have to be unbridled cackling with a group of people while around, a certain board game or sport, right? People can play through reading books, right? You might be somebody who loves being in the world building and kind of diving into the world of books, or you might be somebody who really loves to organize things or people or ideas. Dr. Stuart Brown, who's a pioneer in the field of play research, has 8 play personalities that people identify with one or more of them. It's not a quiz so much as just a framework. And I really am an advocate for that framework because I think as adults, we often shut down at the idea of play, especially improv, but just play in general. And so I think we all have that playful part of us, a creative part of us. And so figuring out what that looks like for you and leaning into that is something that I really encourage people to do.
Yeah, and it's how we all learned when we were kids, right? And, somewhere along the way, we lose that because of what society kind of conforms us to, or the education system, or what have you. But I think it's so gratifying, just even on an individual level, right? When you really enjoy that experience of learning through play. And I've seen it in part through the work that you're doing, Sarah, and you and Jordan, I should say. And I can't wait to be part of another future experience. And I encourage everybody who's listening to really check out the work that you guys are doing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I should mention that too. What Farhan's referring to is Jordan and I offer a monthly playing with an improv mindset. It's an hour to come online and be with a bunch of professionals who are play curious, and it's a lot of fun. So you, listener, are invited.
It's literally the easiest way to see some of the great work that Sarah and Jordan are doing now. So highly encourage that, and I will put a link to that in the show notes as well. Sarah, it's been so awesome having you on, and we learned so much about play and about improv and about the spontaneity and beauty of connection. It was awesome to have you.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right.